Okay, so here's the thing. I've seen a lot of posts since Friday, basically saying something like, we need to fight in order to honor her, right? But, like, what can we do? Literally, what options are available to us? Can anyone tell me? And first of all, I want to apologize for the lighting. Not that my lighting is usually that great. And I will be reading most of my thoughts. I just kind of wanted to get this out now. What the GOP did in 2016 was work. We all know that. Even our friends who voted for Republicans know that. But they can forgive them because it's their team that's winning. I've seen this argument a lot lately where, yeah, I know the guys I voted for are criminals and liars, but the guys you vote for are bad too, so it's okay. Some members of the GOP pretended to make a deal back in 2016, right? Maybe you've probably seen the Lindsey Graham clip.
If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
But none of us actually believed them then, right? I mean, we knew that they were just saying whatever they needed to say to do what they wanted to do. We can't convince these people to keep their word or to do the right thing. For many of us in the U.S., for certain pivotal issues, the right thing is tied up with the moral argument that the ends justify the means, no matter what, at all costs. We can't appeal to the rules to save us because we don't consistently care enough about the rules. We respect the system when it helps us, when it works in our favor, but we disregard the rules when we have to because look what's at stake. Obviously, we can and should elect people that care about democracy and the rule of law, but that can only go so far. And even if we wanted our elected lawmakers to go low, what options are available to them right now? The GOP is holding all the cards with respect to this appointment. They have the presidency and the Senate. Maybe enough Republican senators will go against their own party, like they did when Trump was impeached. That worked well. But other than that, what? We can bite and curse and stamp our feet. We can write letters. We can protest. But we know what's going to happen, and as far as I can tell, we can't stop it. The most conservative, rich white guys in our country have been playing the long game toward this moment since 1978. They're not just going to lay down now, and honestly, I think maybe things might get worse if they do. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but at least if the courts are properly stacked against the liberal democracy in their eyes, maybe our conservative friends and family won't feel the need to hang on so tightly to a Trump presidency. I admit that's a maybe, but perhaps the less that's at stake in their minds in November, the less likely that things are to completely fall apart. There's so much pressure right now for people to not accept a Trump loss that honestly it's becoming harder and harder to not see Civil War II as a real possibility. And maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. Can anyone convince me that I'm wrong? Please? Okay, so the rest of this is going to be a brief history lesson, so if you feel like you've got my main point, now's your chance to duck out before things get too intellectual. As a country, we've always had differing opinions about many things. Some of those things have been a wedge since the very beginning, and have only gotten more polarizing over the decades. We've simply been unable to agree democratically about things like racism, criminal justice, feminism, abortion, LGBTQ rights. And since we can't compromise, we've let the courts decide in many cases. I mean, someone has to decide, right? And when we, the voters, and those we elect, can't agree, what options do we have? So we've probably given too much power to the Supreme Court, and now we're seeing the unintended consequences. People are willing to let their elected officials go to any lengths and get away with terrible things if it means that they might appoint the correct kind of justices to the Supreme Court. We knew that the election in 2016 was really a battle for Supreme Court justices, didn't we? How many of your dads voted for Trump because they were afraid of who the Dems might put into the Supreme Court? Again, the ends justify the means. I think the courts were intended to be a nonpartisan office, hence the justices are not democratically elected. But someone has to appoint them, and it's going to be someone with some kind of power. After Roe v. Wade was decided, certain factions in our country have done everything in their not inconsiderable power to make sure that it's them who get to decide, even as their support has gotten smaller and smaller. Typically, the way that democracy works is that the majority of people in a society decide what the laws are going to be. Of course, we don't want the majority to have too much power, so we have checks and balances. Sort of. The truth is that the majority of voters have always had power over minorities, and we've just kind of been okay with it for the most part. We've definitely seen a lot of hard-fought successes for liberal democracy over the years, thanks in no small part to people like Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We've seen power slowly shift toward better representation and more rights for marginalized people. And for many reasons, including education, more information available via the internet, and just more exposure generally to people who are different, a growing majority of Americans continue to support more progressive ideas. But those who are opposed to this type of expansion of democracy, giving more democratic power to women, people of color, gays, trans people, pretty much anyone that's not your typical waspy white guy, they've been fighting against this shift literally since the 1770s. There were abolitionists in the 1700s, just not enough to stop slavery from being a thing without a civil war decades later. These conservative voices who are opposed to more democracy have been desperately fighting a losing battle to stay relevant. They used to be a major faction in both political parties, but since Reagan, they've consolidated themselves into and then completely taken over the GOP, as more moderates have shifted to the Democratic Party. As liberal democracy has gained a stronger foothold in the larger cities, in even the most red states, in order to keep getting elected, the GOP has taken to choosing their voters more directly, through voter suppression and crazy gerrymandering. But even that is not working as well as it used to. In many ways, the courts are all that they have left. Mitch McConnell saw in the early 2000s that when the Democrats compromised with the Bush administration on education and healthcare, the fact that Congress was able to accomplish literally anything, it helped Bush's re-election in 2004. Well, the last thing that the GOP wanted was for Obama to get re-elected in 2012, so the plan then was to oppose literally everything. And so far, it's worked pretty well for them. Obama expanded the power of the president to get around Congress, and we let him. And now, Trump has all of that power. And since the old system favors the way they want things to be, a government that cannot do anything is a feather in their cap. But the courts have made some pretty progressive decisions lately. Did you know that people can't legally prevent other people from marrying who they want to anymore? Crazy, huh? But luckily for the authoritarian bigots in the GOP, they've been preparing for this. As I said, the GOP have been trying to stack the Supreme Court since 1978. Conservative lawyers and judges created the Federalist Society in 1982, and 5 of the 9, now 8, current Supreme Court justices have come from that Federalist Society. The goal of the society is to fight any social progress.
Progress for the sake.
To interpret the Constitution according to its oldest and most original meaning, especially overturning Roe v. Wade. This is part of a well-documented and not disputed at all history of the Koch brothers pouring money into conservative organizations and think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. We can't let those old biases die in the free market of ideas. And now, 43 out of 51 of President Trump's appellate court nominees were current or former members of that society. But just being a member of the Federalist Society has proven to not be enough. Several Republican court appointees have shifted to the left after getting settled into the court. It's almost as if the tenets of our legal system actually support democracy, but they're not going to let that stop them. So they've started finding young men, or more recently, women actually, I guess they can't fight against all currents, and they groom them for this. They make sure that these guys go to the right prep schools, are members of the right fraternities, clerk with the right justices, and prove themselves to be committed and loyal to the cause. So I ask again, what can we do? I'm open to ideas. I want to do everything I can to support the expansion of democracy and justice in our country. I support progressive candidates. I teach analysis to university students. I try to educate on social media. I make YouTube videos. I just literally right now, in this moment, don't know what to do about this one. I think the Supreme Court has been successfully poisoned, and I don't see a quick fix. Any ideas?
Growing up and